Thank you very much, Macarena. So just give me a moment. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone is seeing my screen okay. So today's session, we're going to be talking about the PSTL tool library. When you're using the PSTL tool library, it's a setup within your GP features that you need to install. Once you install the Professional Tools library feature, it will become available to use within Dynamics GP. Firstly, before you use the PSTL tool, it is advisable to make a backup of the system, which is your GP company databases, because if something goes wrong, you would require a backup in order to revert to your existing data. All right. Also, when you are doing any PSTL tool function, you are also prompted with a warning message to also back up your system. Now, for most users, the tool would require that you are logged into the machine as SA to have the functionality across the board. There are some functionality that you can use as a regular user within the system, but most of the functionality would only work as an SA user. So in order for you to access the PSTL tool, you would, like I said, install the tool within your features, and then you can add the tool to your window. It is located under your Technical Services tool under Project. And here you'd have the Professional Services tool library available to you, and you can add it as a shortcut to your window. I already have mine added, so I don't have to do that step again. Now on the forefront, you see there are a lot of options and various modules. You have the system tools, financial, purchasing, sales, and all the other main modules. You also have some miscellaneous tools as well. All right. So the first tool that we're going to look at is the toolkit. Now, the toolkit was actually designed to go a little further within the system and recreate damaged objects or a damaged general account index file. So in order for you to be able to do that recreation, you would need to select the option and then select next. Now, this particular tool is actually one of the first tools that they came out with. It was probably in one of the earlier versions of GP. And essentially what it is that this tool is going to be used to recreate different type of SQL objects that you can fix an error within the system. And as a result of probably corruption, you didn't exit out of the system properly, some damaged records, etc. Anything that has gone wrong within the database can be used in correcting a first entry that might be wrong. You can use this tool. Now, for the toolkit, we create Sql objects. You have to be careful when using these, because when you're using something like this, you can see that there are some selections that can be made with this particular tool, which is part of the Great Plains. You can choose whether it's a third-party table, any one of the modules. So across the table, you can recreate sort procedures, you can rebuild indexes, you can recreate selective tables, you can also recreate the data for the selective tables. So if you're not a SQL person and you're not familiar with these SQL tables, I would advise that I would advise you that you don't use this professional tool. It is for someone who is more has a skilled SQL mindset, not for someone who is really unskilled to use this professional tool. Now, the next tool would be the menu inquiry utility. Now, oftentimes you would see, particularly, that when you look at our pull-down menu in GP, for example, so you can see that we have transactions, inquiry, reports, cards, and also we have the options that fall under each area. So under financials, we have the statements, advance, the trial balance, the budgets. Under the cards, we have under sales, for example, we have cash, customer, national accounts, addresses, summary. So if it is, we would say, for example, to go to our cards option, you're going to see the exact menu listed under here. So say, for example, you may not have registration keys to open up, and you say, for example, that you don't want the option to be available to that particular user. You do have the option to hide or make visible those menu items or those menu options. So in the professional tool library, you can control that by using the command properties below. So you do have the option to select the category or the command that you would like to remove. Currently, you can see that these are currently enabled and visible, but you do have the option to control that if you want to deselect it and make it the particular option as unavailable or not enabled to that particular user. So you do have choices across the board under Dynamics GP. So if it is you would like to have the option shown, or if you don't want the option to be available to the user, you can play around with this and enable or make visible as you wish. So this enables you to make a decision whether you want to make it available to the users or not. Is especially designed for like a cleanup utility, so that you can ensure that persons are only able to have access to the options that you would like. So the next option would be the update user date. Now, the update user date, now you know currently in GP, when you are not within the system and it's the next day, 12 in the morning, you would usually get a prompt that states that you would like to have the date shown for the particular day, which is the following day. GP would actually give you a message on the system telling you that it's now the following day. Now with this option, it allows you to update the date while you're within the system, right? So if you are working in the system, and quite honestly, as an end user, if it says you are in the system and you are using it from one day into the next day, it is going to just have the system date, like I said, updated to the next day. All right, and in order to have that functionality enabled, because this is actually done at the point of entry, you would have to check this option box, and that is going to give you the availability to do so. Okay, so the next option would be the account modifier / combiner. Now this is going to allow you to join general ledger accounts. So this has actually been a very popular part of the tool set, because what you are allowed to do is now take any given account that you may have. Say, for example, I'm going to take my savings, and I want to take all of this data and move it across to another account that I have in my chart of accounts. So for example, as you saw, I chose my savings account. So there may be a balance in the account. There may be a series of transactions, maybe historical or even in your current year. And you may want to be able to move those figures across to your petty cash account. And this is an example that I'm just going to use. So you are moving it from one account number to another account number. Now the idea behind this is, once you use the convert option, all of your opening balances as were currently in your savings account would now be a part of your petty cash account, as if you had posted it to your petty cash account all along. Your balances, your transactions would now belong to the petty cash account. You do have the option to also choose ranges, or you can import a series of accounts through the import functionality. So let's just take a look at this for just a moment. If I were to go to my inquiry screen, financial summary. Let's see if I have any data. Okay, so in my 2014 year, I'm in Fabricam, by the way, I do have some beginning balances inside of here. Okay, so what I want to do is combine all these transactions into my petty cash account. So typically what this would have meant is that I would have had to write a journal entry to move from one account to another. And basically when you do that, you can't necessarily get rid of the account, because there would have been history tied to the account. So now if it had transactions for the current year, you would have to deactivate the account and all of that. But with the tool, once it moves the transactions from one account to another account, the savings account would become as though it didn't exist. All right, so what it would do, it would now transfer from one account to the other, and you're not going to have the availability of the savings account anymore. So let's go back into the tool. So this is my petty cash account. And so there are some beginning balances as well. And let's just remember what's the beginning balance. So we have some figures here. So let's go back to the tool. And what I am going to do, I am going to convert. So this would be savings, and this is petty cash. And I'm going to click convert. It's verifying that I have a current backup. I'm going to click continue. Now it's asking if you're combining accounts and using intercompany transactions. So please log into the other companies with the intercompany transactions and post the intercompany badges prior to proceeding. So for those of you who are using intercompany, this is something that you would need to do because the intercompany type of transactions that are being held. But if you don't have intercompany transactions, then this option is not for you. So let's click continue. So again, this is going to depend on the size of your database, right? The speed in which it would take to complete. So for me, it completed pretty quickly because I'm in the Fabricam company. I'm going to click OK. So it's telling me that the account modifier is complete on the system to party tables. Click OK. And it's also asking to reconcile your years. So I'm going to click OK. And the reconcile years is just for the purpose to ensure that the balances that were updated, that everything has been updated appropriately. So we can go back within the inquiry window. Let's go back to the summary. And let's take a look at this real quick. So here we can see that the savings account is no longer available to be selected. All right, so we do have the petty cash account available to us. So we know that the saving account is not there. Let's go to our petty cash account. And let's go into, now I can't remember all the balances, but in terms of the opening balance account, we do have all of the transactions that were in the savings account. We now have it under the petty cash account. So this is pretty cool. We have just combined the savings with the petty cash account. All right. And let's go back. Oh, and there's also a report that prints at the end. The report just lets you know that the account 1140 is now combined with 1130. Okay. Now let's take a look at Checkbook Modifier. For those of you who have multiple checkbooks and you need to move transactions from one checkbook to another, this is the option that you can use. You can choose your starting checkbook and you can modify it to one of the existing checkbooks. It's going to work similar to the account modifier, but this is just the checkbook option. So you'll be merging one checkbook ID to another checkbook ID, right? There's also fiscal periods. This will allow you to be able to cleanly remove transactions, historical as well as open transactions through your beginning and ending start and periods. Especially when you are in the business of having change from a particular fiscal account, it is going to allow you to set up a new fiscal period. All right, so you do have that availability with the fiscal period modifier to do that. There are some couple of clients that we have come across that needed to modify their year end. And part of that meant having to go into the SQL table to make those type of changes. But with the modifier, this is something that a system administrator can do with this functionality. Pretty cool as well. With the GL master trigger, what this does is going to allow you to take data from one master database, so your Fabricam company, for example, and replicate it to another company or other companies. So in other words, if you are in the business of setting up a new company and you need to get some of the master records, for example, the accounts, the vendors, the customers, you would create the new company using the GP utilities, and then you can come here using the PSTL tool and select the GL master trigger, select the established company that you already have, and select what master records you would like to replicate across the other companies. So that way you don't have the hassle of trying to hand key it into a new company that you are currently setting up. You do have the ability to identify a from company and set it up within a new company, whether it's vendors, customer, or general ledger accounts. All right. So this is something that you can play around with and see how that works for you. And there's also, so this is currently GL master triggers for financial tools, but you can also have the same functionality under receivables management as well. So here you can see receivables master triggers. All right, so receivables have the same. You can bring across master records for receivables management, as well as payables also has the same functionality. All right, so financial, payables, and receivables, you are able to bring across those records, accounts, vendors, customers, right, for each of those modules. Right, so pretty much they're all, like I said, they all do the same thing. It's just depends on what type of data that you are trying to bring across to the new company that you would have created. All right. And some of these I would skip through because, like I said, most of these, as you can see, it's pretty much similar, but you will get an idea of what you can use it for. So with the 1099, for example, this is another modifier functionality. All right. So pretty much with the 1099 modifier, this is going to allow you to change documents that are within your system and you did not mark as a 1099, or you did not say, for example, set up vendors in the system that were marked as 1099 vendors. At the beginning of the year, you are going to be able to make that change. So say, for example, at the beginning of the year, I set up a vendor, or even throughout the year, but when setting up that vendor, you did not mark that vendor as 1099 vendor. So I'm just going to pull up a vendor. Okay, and let's go into options. And here you can see that we have some drop down under the information that's identified. So you have not a 1099 vendor. So you'll definitely have to make sure that you change it when you're setting up a vendor, if it is a 1099 vendor, because at default, it is going to say that it's not a 1099 vendor. So you are going to have to change it to whether it's miscellaneous interest dividend, right? And you also have a 1099 box. So if I was to change this to miscellaneous, then you also would have to change the data here. Now, if you forgot to mark the Ace Travel Company as a 1099 vendor, and you begin to put in transactions during the year for this vendor, then later found out that you failed to mark the vendor as a 1099 vendor, you would definitely need to go into the summary and update the vendors. So if I was to go into cards, sorry, oops. Right, and here you would update the 1099 so that it's accurately reflected. And let me also check the cards. And you can also go into the 1099 details. You can select the particular vendor. And here you would actually have to plug in the amount so that it is accurately reflected in terms of 1099. Now, you don't have transactions to back that up, but you would at least have the amounts for each of the vendors. So with the particular tool, as we go back, is going to allow you to identify for any given year the vendor and the documents for which of them are 1099. And it's going to allow you to update for those vendors, right, for any of the given year. Okay, so we finished up with the 1099 modifier. We already talked about the PM master trigger. Like I said, it's similar to GL as well as receivables. The next one is the PM minimum check. This allows you to select a minimum check balance for your check process. So any checks that's being created under the minimum amount, if I turn this on, it allows you to set a minimum amount of which you are going to pay. And then anything that falls below that would not be part of the overall check run, right? So just remember with the ones that has the checkbox next to it, in order for you to enable it, it's not just a matter of selecting the option button, but you also have to select the checkbox to enable the functionality. All right, so what you would notice with the difference is that if I were to go on PM Master Trigger, the next option becomes available. But with these, right, it's just a matter of enabling or disabling, right? There's no next option. Now, with the Select Check Combiner tool, this is going to allow you to select multiple checks. So 2 or more checks that you would like to combine, right? So if you're involved in the check printing process and you have 2 or more batches that you are ready to print checks from. So for example, let's see, transactions, purchasing. Let's go into select checks. Now, for those of you who are payables oriented, this should look familiar to you. Now, what you would do, you would set up a batch. And based on the criteria that you have, you select a batch. Based on the criteria you have, you're going to build the batch. And then you would select the batch that you're going to pay. Now, if for some other reason, there's somebody else who's also involved in the process who has to select checks and you need to combine both of these batches, for example, for the check printing. Now, what it is going to mean is that one of these batches would have to be removed, and then you would have to now go back and reselect the batch that you want to be able to print the check from, and then add to that batch, right? That's what you would have done in a regular circumstance. But with the combiner, this tool is now going to allow to combine both of these batches together, right? And instead of having to delete one of the batches, go back and re-enter the transactions or add to the transaction or add to that batch, you are now able to combine both checks together within accounts payables. Right? The thing with accounts payable, you only process one batch at a time. So combining both of the batches together with the combiner tool, it's going to be beneficial because you can just combine both of them under one batch. With the vendor combiner or the vendor modifier, it's similar again to the account modifier / combiners as well. You are able to select a vendor and you're now able to select the vendor And then you can select the ending vendor name that you would like to combine that vendor with. So you can state that you would now want the new vendor called, say for example, ACE, and we're going to use the same structure, but instead of 001, we're going to call it ACE Travel 002, right? Now we're going to do is convert Advanced Travel 001 to now Advanced Travel 002. So again, you're going to be prompted that you need to ensure that you have a backup before proceeding. In the event that you need to revert, I'm going to click continue. Now they said that the vendor name modifier is finished. So let's take a look to see what our results are. It also has a report that prints the screen as well. And this is showing that the starting vendor is 001 and the ending vendor is 002. And we can also check it within the system. You can go under cards, and then you can go under purchasing and vendor. And let me close. Let's go back in because it was open previously. So here you can see that the vendor ID ACE Travel 0001, the vendor name is now ACE Travel 002. So previously it was ACE Travel 001, but we manipulated it using the modifier and changed it to ACE Travel 002. Right, so we decided to change the name of the vendor. So particularly if your vendor name is not appropriate for your vendor anymore, you do have the option to go inside the tool and make that change, and therefore retaining the information to all the information related to this vendor without affecting anything within the system. So it is a pretty cool option that is going to allow you to be able to make that modification within the system. So I can also check the inquiry screen as well. Let's just take a look at that quickly. And let's see transaction by vendor. And here we can see the vendor name ACE Travel 002. So all the information under this vendor is also retained. All right, so basically all the information is now moved to the new vendor name. So that's vendor name modifier. All right, so that finishes up the purchasing tool. We have a couple of more options. We have sales. We have payroll. I won't be looking at the payroll options today, but let's take a look at the sales. So sales, we have the same option in terms of the modifier. We do have customer name modifier. Similar to vendor, you can select the customer number, and then you can modify the customer name for this particular vendor. We checked the RM master triggers already. Like I said, it's also similar to financial and purchasing. Now, I find this one to be quite interesting, particularly when you want to go back within the historical tables and automatically remove, how can I put it? You want to go back into the historical table and basically what you're going to do is move the records back into the open table. So with the RM transaction on apply, once you move it back into the open table, you can now reapply the records that you want to apply. So this is also another cool functionality. You see a lot of clients wanting to reapply records or unapply a particular transaction so that they can reapply it to something else. Now, say for example, you probably have a credit memo and you want to apply it to a sales document. And you have applied it and then you moved it to history. Now that is part of the process that we conduct on a monthly basis. So this is where you move paid transactions to history. Now, once you move the paid transactions to history, you do not have the ability to go in and unapply those transactions. So what this tool does, it's going to allow you to take those transactions, right? Check credit memos, for example, and then bring those documents back to the open state so that you can now apply more appropriately the checks, the credit memos to those invoices. And then it's going to allow you to then move them back into history. So even for that matter, even if there's, say for some reason that you need to move the transaction out of history, it may not even be for an unapply reason. You just say, for example, need to move it out of history to be able to probably add more paid transactions to the receivables transaction apply, you are able to use this tool to do so. So it's actually twofold. If you do need to move it to open transactions to apply to another transaction, or if you just need to, if you preemptively moved it to history and you need to open it in the open state in Dynamics GP, you can use the receivables transaction on apply as well. Now with the salesperson modifier, it is along the same line as the vendor modifier. You are going to select the salesperson modifier. It's going to allow you to take the salesperson ID. And this is part of the sales and the distribution system, where in the sales order, so for example, sales transaction entry, and this is if you are using the sales transaction entry, for example. And I choose a particular customer. We can choose Adam Park, who we may be selling to. Now the customer and the salesperson ID is assigned at the customer record and it follows through on the sales order. Now, of course, I have the ability to assign another salesperson who may be responsible. But let's say, for example, Greg E is no longer going to be Greg E. We want to modify Greg E to be someone else. So in the setup of Greg E, right, we have Greg E, last name Eckerson. We have some commission sales. We have non-commission sales. We have cost of sales, right? But we need to now rename Greg E to something different. So we can have the flexibility of doing that. And like I said, it is similar. So in the sales modifier, you're going to set Greg E, who is now going to become Greg Y, and convert. And that is updated. It's also going to print the document to show that it has been modified. Let's close this. Answer. So let's go back in. And we're going back into Adam Park Resort. I believe that's the one that I chose before. So Greg E has now become Greg Y. So pretty straightforward as well. And you may be wondering, like, why would someone be needing to make these system changes in the system? One of the main reasons is either error, by error, or the person would have had the system for a while and they're required to make the change within the system. Depending on the business that you may be dealing with, maybe their names have changed, or something within the business have changed that requires you to make that change to reflect within GP. Oftentimes, in the case you are going to have, I mean, even as overly simplistic that it may sound, without this tool, you were going to need to set up a second record that's called Greg Y, right? You would not have been able to just automatically make that change or also alter that change within the system, all right? So instead of setting up a secondary record and losing all that historical record that Greg E had assigned to him, you may not necessarily be a connection between the two sales records or the two salespersons that you have. But now that you could combine them and rename them, you are now going to keep all the transactions that were currently under that particular vendor. You are going to not lose those records, which is great. All right, and at this point, Charity Modifier, Charity Combiner also fits within the same functionality. So we won't even bother to go under this. Now this SOP customer lookup, and we also have SOP number check. The first one I'm going to look at is the SOP customer lookup. Now for this option, you're going to use the tool to store customer specific ordering history, as well as the last invoice date. You can also store the last price that was used, and you're going to be able to use this option to view information within the sales processing entry window. And you can see that from the sales item detail window as well. Now to have this set up, you actually need to do a form of activation. Like I said, it's a simple marking the checkbox, because without this option, it's not going to be activated. And also, you need to build the initial data from your existing history tables. So in Microsoft Dynamics GP, under your GP menu, you go to Tools, you go to Setup, and then you go to Sales Order Processing. Tools, Setup, Sales, and Sales Order Processing. Now, here you can choose the initial data. So you have a number of options here. So let's go into options. Sorry, additional, and then we're going to click on create initial lookup data. So now this process can take some time. It depends on how many historical SOP line item of data exists, and then you would receive a message when the processing is finished. And just an important note, in order for you to be able to access this option, you are going to need to be logged in as SA. So as you can see, when I clicked on it again, it shows that it is still processing. So in the meantime, while that is currently processing in the background, all right, like I said, it depends on how much historical SOP line data exists within the system. We can take a look at the SOP PO number check. Now, this is not that new, but it came out in around 2011. Now, the SOP stands for the sales order processing, and your PO stands for the purchase order. So we were looking at the SOP transaction screen a while ago. So this is your sales transaction screen. And then for those of you who are not familiar with this, this is where you put quotes, orders, and invoices within the system. And this is where we sell things to our customer. Now, even if they don't have things or inventory to sell, you do want to use the screen as an invoicing to your customer. Now, with the purchase order screen, purchasing, purchase order entry, what this was designed to do is to allow you to identify items that you're going to buy and fulfill your inventory requirements. Or if you're not an inventory user, It can be used to identify services or non-inventory products, right? And you can also use to formalize your invoicing process. Now, let's see. Okay, sorry about that. Now, with this particular tool, what it does, let me just bring back up the sales transaction entry. And so what this deals with is when a customer so I have the sales order and the purchase order. So what the sub PO check is going to allow you to identify the duplicates. So when I'm putting in a purchase order, a sales order, sorry, for example, and I identify the customer to who I'm going to be selling, and that customer gives me a purchase order number, then what is going to happen? The PO number is going to be stored with the order. And should Aaron Fitz place another order, so I'm just going to enter an ad hoc order, PO number. So say Aaron Fitz decided to place another order, this particular utility is going to prevent that complication. So it's going to prevent Aaron Fitz for this PO number of 700, right? For entering an order 2 or 3 times for the same purchase order number, right? Because we do require unique PO numbers, especially when you're doing business with your customers. You want to ensure that the PO numbers are unique. So it's going to prevent that duplication within the system. And that's what that utility is all about. So once you turn that on, let me just go back. So once you turn that on, once you do business for Aaron Fitz Electric, for example, and he does additional transactions with you, you're not going to have the same PO number associated with the same transaction, right? And it's going to simplify your ordering process, and that utility is very helpful. I'm just going to go back within the SOP processing setup. Let's see if it's finished or it's still. Okay, so it's still going. So this may take some time. I am not certain how long it's going to take to finish, because like I said, it's all also dependent on the amount of historical SOP line data that you have. Okay, so hopefully we do get to look at that one. But I think right now we have covered all these sales tools in terms of the triggers, the unapply, the modifiers. We're still waiting for this one to complete its process. With the payroll, I would not be touching on the the payroll today. Under the inventory, it's pretty similar. You have the combiners and modifier, which is going to be similar to the others that we would have covered previously. And then we have the miscellaneous tools section. And those of you who are not using inventory, it's fine, but you would set up new inventory into the system, but you also set up what is called sites. And as part of the inventory system, it keeps tracks of your quantity based on a per site basis. So if you are using this portion of the inventory for multi-sites, yeah, once you're using multiple sites, so you may have a second or third location, you probably need to combine the sites together. That's basically what the combiner does. Or say, for example, one of your sites has become a different name. That's what you're going to use the modifier to do that. It's going to correspond to any transactions or records, right? It all depends on what you're combining or modifying. Description, with the customer or the vendor point of view. If it is you are currently entering an item on a sales order on the sales transaction entry screen, you have the ability to change description. So you can have the modifier be able to select the transaction that's included on the item, right? Whereas the item description may have changed, right? So here you can have that updated under your cards, inventory, item, right? And you may have where the description might have changed. All right, so in this case, you have for this particular item, you have multi-core processor, but you are able to update the description. This is how we have it as we sold it, as we purchased it. And if it is, we wanted to change it to multi-core processor to single core processor, for example, all the information that's, all those records that are related to this item ID, all those records would now change to single core processor, right? Again, that's a part of what that tool is all about. Okay. Right, item number combiner, item number modifier, pretty much the same. GL number combiner and modifier. Item reconciler, this is particularly important when you want to narrow down on a particular item in inventory that you're trying to reconcile, or even across different sites. So in other words, what this is attempting to do is ensure that all the details, transactions that are related to your inventory, that is your purchasing, as well as the outgoing inventory items, are matching the quantities that are being reported. So if I was to look at my item in inventory, for example, inventory item, let me, if I go down to item quantity sites, for example. So here is the processor for all sites, right? I have 0 on hand, I have 2 allocated. And you also have all the other quantities that are kept about this item, whether it's sold, returned, in use, damage, are they back ordered, are they on, are they returned if they're damaged, return in use, example. So all of these are reconciled with the reconciler to ensure that the details of what you see here is updated correctly. All right, so you can use the reconciler for that. All right. So that pretty much covers the inventory tool. Let me just go back and see if the SOP is finished. It seems as though it's still running, guys. Okay. All right, so with the fixed assets modifier, very similar again. You can change the asset ID to a new asset ID number. So I can change asset ID 0001 and I can name this whatever I want as the new asset number, right? You use this again if it is you don't want to give up the history, but you just need to make the change of the name. You can go ahead and use the modifier. All right. Now with the default item, the default add item POP SOP, this is going to allow you to default certain items in any one of those transactional screens, whether it be the POP or the SOP, or the receiving entry or the invoice entry. The whole idea of this is just to make data entry much faster, right? So you can set up certain defaults, default items within the system that you want to appear. You can use this, you can use this option and you can have it enabled. All right. With the doc date verify, this one, with the document date verify, this is also sort of new. What this does, it is going to verify the document date. So say, for example, if you are using a document date and, sorry, if you're using a posting date and, yeah, posting in particular, if you're using a posting date and the document date is going to meet with the fiscal periods that are currently open, right now it does not do that. All right. So let me just repeat that. So say, for example, the document date is going to meet with the fiscal period that are currently open. In GP, it does not do that currently. So if you set up a batch in Dynamics GP, and say, for example, inside of payables, you have set up a batch where you start entering your invoices, and part of the posting options that you set up is to use the batch date. When you use the batch date posting, we know that the date that we assign to the batch is going to be meet the criteria of the open periods that we currently have open. But as far as the document date, there are documents that would be currently put inside those document dates are not necessarily going to be within the same date range, right? So let me give an example. You have a posting date, a posting date, batch date. For example, that you would have set up, say, within July, and you want these documents to be entered in as of July, right, into the general ledger. So you know that the batch would be checked. You would ensure that the date is open for July so that you can post into, right? So you know that batch is fine because you would have gone into the fiscal setups and checked to see if it's open. But what about the payable documents? We need to also ensure that those documents also fit within the open fiscal period as well, right? And there, because of user error, I mean, there can be instances where the date has been entered to a future date and not necessarily within it doesn't meet the criteria for the period in which you are trying to post to, right? So does the system allow you to do that currently? Right? It's going to allow you to post it anyway, right? GP is not going to stop you from posting it. Now, what the tool is going to do is going to ensure that the document date, it's going to verify against all periods that's currently set up, what is currently open, and it's going to ensure that it's posted to the correct open date, because there are instances where people are entering the payables and they misstate the payables date and it's posted to the wrong open date. So this is a very good option to use within the system. Now with the decimal place tool, if you are going to use multiple decimal places within your business, and you are at the point where when you are setting it up, you are using multiple decimal places within the data entry, and you don't want multiple decimal places to be showing up on your checks, for example, you are able to use the decimal place tool. So what happened, the check amount that's being displayed, it is going to follow the normal currency, which would be the 2 decimal places, right? Your system may be set up for 4 or 5, but with this decimal place tool, you are able to have that adjusted, right? On your checks to 2 decimal places. The last one is to deal with company copy. This may be some value to you as well. Just like the GL master triggers or the PM master triggers or the RM master triggers, this is going to allow you to take a copy of an existing company. All right, so you can choose. So it's going to allow you to choose a source company, and then you're going to be able to put it into a destination company. And you can include data as well as report options. Now, this may serve a purpose, particularly if you're trying to create a test company and you want to be able to have either all or certain portions of the test company copied from the live company database over to a test company, right? It also allows you to be able to copy certain pieces of data, right? You have the option to also copy modules, company, particular modules, within Dynamics GB. So it is pretty nice when you have to set up additional companies within the organization and you may not need all the data, or you just want to reflect some of the modules within the system. You have the option to choose that. All right. So if you want to set up a test company of your own, or if you want to be able to set up a company for training, etc., you are able, like I said, you are able to use the copy company function. So that is all of the tools. I think this is still running, so we were not able to take a look at this one. But like I said, in essence, this is going to allow you to store customer-specific ordering history. And you're going to be able to see it within your sales processing entry window and also your sales item detail window as well. All right. So what it does, when invoice documents are posted, for example, the new entries are added to the table and it stores the customer item historical data. So from your document inquiry screen for your SOP, you are able to drill back into that record and see all the invoice documents that were posted. So it's going to show you all the items the customer would have ordered in the past. It will also show you how many have been invoiced, and also it's going to show you the document date and the unit price. All right, so this is also a pretty cool functionality because you get to see all of that in one screen. All right, but unfortunately, this is taking a little time to run, so I'm not going to be able to show that functionality today. All right, I do, however, would like to thank you all for taking time to take part into this webinar. If you do have any questions, you can also message us or email us at support@optimus.group or operations@optimus.group, and we'll be able to assist you. All right, so with that said, I'd like to thank you all again and take care.